Hey everybody, Carrie Hoffmeister here with Carrie on Abundant TV. I am super excited for the guest I have on today. Please give a warm welcome to Mark D. Conklin. Mark, thanks so much for chatting with me today.
Thanks for having me on, Carrie. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're welcome. So usually I like to give an intro of like what the certain people that I have on do, but you do so many things. I felt like my intro would have been like 10 minutes long. So he's a producer,
Well,
a songwriter, a singer. He interviews people. He's got his
yeah,
own shows, and so he does it
I
all.
don't sleep much. Yeah,
So, Mark, all the viewers know that we like to start off the show with what we call carry on the questions. So just some rapid fire questions, and these are actually just this or that questions, so it makes it a little bit easier for you to answer quickly.
okay,
Just a chance to get to know you a little bit better and just break the ice for what's to come. Are you ready?
okay. I think so.
Okay. Swimming pool or beach?
Swimming pool,
Okay. Fruits or vegetables?
fruits,
Cats or dogs?
Mm, cats,
Okay. Summer or winter?
summer,
Salt or pepper?
salt,
Cash or card?
card,
Cookies or chips?
cookies.
Soda or juice?
Unfortunately, soda.
Yeah. Farm or city?
Farm,
Text or call?
text.
Same. Coffee or tea?
Hmm, tea.
Really? Okay.
Well, I had to give it up. I had to give up caffeine.
Uh,
Otherwise, I would have definitely said coffee. But now I'm an herbal tea guy.
okay. That's awful.
I
Um,
know.
Coke or Pepsi?
Coke,
Same. Pizza or pasta?
pizza.
Okay. That's pretty good. We answered kind of the same. I think I would say pasta, but
Some of these are, these are hard
hard
choices. I mean, you
because you
can't
love
go.
both. I know. Yeah.
Sure, you can't go wrong. Although you could go wrong with pasta. Usually pizza you can't mess up too bad.
That's
Pasta
true.
you could mess it up.
You know what my new like favorite pizza binge right now is
What's that?
pickle pizza. Have you had it?
Oh boy. No.
Okay. You cannot knock it until you try it because I thought it would be weird. It is so good. It's like white sauce with like dill and then some pickle on there. And I'm telling you, it is the best flavor together
Really?
you'll ever have. It's so good.
See, I'm from Jersey. It's almost against our religion here to
You have to try it. It's
to
so
do.
good. It's so good. You don't even need, do you do ranch with your pizza?
No.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say you don't even
No.
need ranch with it. It's so good.
Okay, well, I don't know who makes that around here,
You
but
can literally, where are you at? Where are you located?
in New Jersey.
You are in New Jersey. Okay. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know. It's very popular here. So I don't know if it's just like a Michigan
Okay.
thing or what it is, but it is like all the
Okay.
so if you try it, you let me know. Okay.
All right.
All right.
That's a promise.
And all of you, go try pickle pizza. It's so good. All right, Mark. So we're gonna get right into it. You have a lot of background and a lot that you've done in your background that has led you up to what we are going to talk about, which is your new album, The Gospel According to Mark, that comes out on May 17th. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But can you just give us a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are now?
It's a sordid tale. But
We like those.
I like a lot of people, young people, I started playing guitar when I was 13 years old in bands and things like that. And I thought, we'll be the next Beatles, but of course that doesn't always quite happen
Not always.
for anyone. Um, but I did love it. And so I played in high school bands and things, but in my 20s I became a working musician, and I just I gigged, I played clubs, I toured, I backed up other people, I led my own things, and I was just kind of being the guitar guy, the guitar singer guy. Played in a lot of blues and soul bands and things like that, funk bands. But at some point, I said, "Well, I'm tired of this, and I'd rather just kind of stay home and barbecue on the weekend, go
Yeah,
get pickled pizza."
amen.
And so I said, "Well, maybe I'll just kind of slow that down, and I'll write songs for other people and produce for other people." And I started doing that sort of in earnest and flying back and forth to Nashville. That was my home away from home for many years. I would do at least 6 to 8 weeks there every year, and found some success doing that, especially in film and television, getting a lot of songs placed in film and TV spots. And then I kind of happenstance met a young girl who was 17 years old, was in our town, who was a great talent, and I wanted to help her with her music. So I started helping her in the studio and things like that. But she was very self-contained. She was just sort of brilliant doing her own thing. But her mother said, "Well, we'd want to go to the next level. What should we do?" And I said, "Oh, well, I mean, I could manage her, So I
Wow.
all of a sudden I was an artist manager, which never having done that before or wanted to do that before, but she was so talented. I just thought I should try to be involved and help her in some way. And we had a bunch of success. By the time she was a junior in college, she was making more money than most adults I knew, and we were completely independent, just putting out records. And so I thought, well, I did that once, I can do that again, and started managing more people and built a roster and ended up running a company in New York called Engage for a number of years as their head of music. It was a sports and entertainment management company. But all that time I was teaching
Mm.
on the side in the summertime. I would teach young people how to write songs and do audio production. And
Wow.
I thought, oh, one day when I'm old and retired, that's what I'll do. But as God would have it and fate would have it, that didn't turn out that way. There was an opening at the Prudential Center in Newark, New Jersey. They had just opened a Grammy Museum, an East Coast outpost, and they needed somebody to run it. I just reached out because I wanted to just say, "Hey, I'll do some camps for you in the summer." But in conversation, they were like, "Hey, Mark, would you be interested in this job?" And I thought, "No, I don't want a job. I'm in the music business." But I found it was a really big opportunity. It was a chance to really educate a lot of young people, to do all these really cool programs, and to interview all these great recording artists. And I thought, they won't hire me, but I'll give it a shot. And I threw my hat in the ring, and 10 interviews with 17 people later, which
Wow.
is true. I landed the gig, ended up running the museum. And during that time, I started interviewing all of these artists, and it really fueled up my creative juices again. I found that I was very excited about, just because I would talk to these people and they were operating at such a high level, and they were talking about their inspirations and their craft. So I thought, I should pick up the guitar and start this again, because I'd been so focused on the business for a while. So it was really interesting that I had to go get a day job, quote unquote, even though it
Yeah.
was a very cool day job, um, to get back into making music and sort of pull myself out of the music business, as being an executive. So it is from that is how I ended up into this album, because it is from those interviews with those people, and specifically one with Gloria Gaynor, that ended up prompting this album. So it's funny. It's come full circle. I've sort of I always say that I've negotiated a record deal from on behalf of the artist, on behalf of the company, and then now on behalf of myself. So I've seen it, the business, probably from every side that you can see it. But I do love the creative side very much, obviously. And so I'm in a good place now that I get to sort of teach and make music at the same time.
That's very inspiring. I'm like, wow. Um, that's amazing. And what incredible opportunities that God opened the door for you. What would you say? Because I have an almost 15-year-old stepdaughter, and her friend Haven, they write together and sing together, and they're so amazing. It's scary, because it's their huge passion that they want to do. But for somebody like you who kind of grew up wanting to kind of do the same, what would you say to your younger self that could be used to people like that that want to do that for a living, being that you've seen all that the industry has?
Well, we teach it. So the Grammy Museum ended. The run ended at the Prudential Center, but we continue with a program called Record High, where
Mhm.
we actually teach young people about having careers in music and entertainment. So I'm often in a position to tell young people these things. And I find it interesting, they say this, that when you give advice to someone, you're really giving advice to your younger
Yeah.
self. That's all, you're really doing. And so I do a lot of that. And so for me, what I always tell people is uh, the main thing I tell them is, and I did not make this up. Steve Martin said this actually. He was asked once. He said, "Be so good they can't ignore you," and they is the audience, the industry, your peers, whomever. But the only thing you can control is how good you are. Everything else, that you have to do a lot of other things. Don't get me wrong, but that's the most important thing that you can do. And it's the part I think that people really overlook because they're always like, how can I get a manager? How do I get a record deal? How do I get a following? And it's all those things. But the truth is, if you're so good that they can't ignore you, that those things come. Now, they won't come if you're sitting in your house and not sharing your music with anybody and not going out and doing things. But that's the first thing that you have to do. And it's the thing that's most often overlooked. So I tell young people to set aside time and be very diligent about being better. That's something that I didn't I was very talented, but I didn't have that kind of focus. I lacked that focus and I lacked sort of the vision of what I needed to do next. So the first thing I would say is be so good they can't ignore you. And then the second thing is you have to become your own CEO. Like you have to become your own business. And so you have to learn the business. It's not enough to just say like, "Oh, I want to be a chef." Okay, cool. And I want to open a restaurant. Great. But do you know anything about hiring staff? Do you know anything about zoning laws? Do you know anything about menus? It's not, you can't just be a cook. You have to learn the other things. So you have to learn the business. How does it work? How do you get paid? Who should you know? Who should you meet? And then you have to go out and do it. But probably the most important thing, besides being so good they can't ignore you, is really just developing people skills. Because young people
Yeah.
in particular, they have a hard time making eye contact. They have a hard time asking questions. If they overcome that and work on those skills, go read How to Win Friends and Influence People,
Mm.
work on those skills, they will be so far ahead of everyone else around them. So if they're really talented or they're really skilled and they have the people skills, that's where I've seen the most success. The people who lack, and I'll be honest with you, I've seen people be very successful who just had great people skills and they weren't as talented.
Yeah.
I've seen completely the opposite. I've seen very talented people who limited themselves because they didn't have the drive, the ambition, and the people skills. So be great and develop your people skills, and you'll be ahead of most people. That's what I would say.
Hey, that's really good. I feel like that's not a lot of what you hear from people with advice with that, of how to have that. And I feel like too, with in today's age with social media and all that, it's a lot of people can get those viewers and that following, but it still takes more than that to really continue that success and to be great. So,
For
but
sure.
through all of this that you've done, and I mean, you also, interview and have interviewed some huge artists and
Yeah.
like that. But throughout this journey for you, like, what is something that has surprised you the most that maybe you learned about yourself?
Through the recording process,
Yeah, just through,
what?
yeah.
uh, well, a few things. I had a vision for this. I thought I had a vision for this project. God had a bigger vision for the project than I did, and that's why there's all these great artists on it. There's
Yeah.
13 Grammy Award winners, I think, or more, tons of Dove Awards and things like that. I did not have that vision for myself. All I was trying to do was make a record that I had this idea. It was actually a prayer. I knew I wanted to make a worship. I knew I wanted to do something kingdom building music wise for a while. I just didn't know what the mechanism was going to be, like what was the vehicle I was going to be to do that. It was after I interviewed Gloria Gaynor for an evening with Gloria Gaynor at the Grammy Museum. I was very inspired by her putting music and her faith together, but I was also very inspired by the music itself. I was listening to it ahead of the interview
Mhm.
and I really enjoyed it. It was like it wasn't exactly contemporary Christian. It wasn't contemporary gospel. It was more of a sort of a retro soul R&B record. And I thought that's sort of more my wheelhouse. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do something like that, my version of that type of thing. And that was all I knew I wanted to do.
Mm.
But I decided I had to write it about something. I was like, well, what am I going to write about? And I said a prayer to God one day. I said, God, what do you want me to write this album about? And I heard a voice like from within, not out loud, but you know, in the quiet, it said the gospel according to Mark. And I was like, that's funny. I was
I
like,
know,
that's
that's pretty great.
I was like, that's pretty great. Like, and then I'll do some gospel theme. My name was Mark. I am named after the writer of the gospel. My brother was named John. This is all true. Um, but then I thought, well, wait a minute. What if we actually tell the gospel story? And then I was like, how do you do that without the song sounding too literal? And so I thought, oh, I'll have a narrator. That'll be have a narrator on this. The narrator will tell the scripture story, and then the songs will be the commentary to that. And one day I was editing the interview I did with Gloria Gaynor,
Mhm.
heard her voice, and I thought, wait a minute, that's the voice. That's the voice I should have as the narrator. So I reached out to her, and I'm telling you, I was so surprised, Carrie, because within 24 hours, I got a note back saying she'd be honored to do it.
Wow.
And I thought that was, I was just asking, like, take a shot, see what happens. But
Yeah.
she said yes. So once she said yes, that sort of opened up a lot of possibilities and a lot of, because then it's, you go ask somebody else and you say, oh, I'm doing this project. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Um, sorry, my phone started to ring and sometimes it messes with
That's okay.
my earphones. So as long as you can hear me, we're okay.
The
The
Gloria
question
Jean.
is, can I hear you?
Just kidding.
But as soon as she said yes, it opened up this um, opportunity to ask other people, because once you ask them,
Yeah.
you say, well, listen, Gloria Gaynor's on this. And oh, well, sure, we'd love to do it. And so I think if I'd asked everybody at the same time, I probably would have got a lot more no's. But because I sort of accidentally asked Gloria and then asked somebody else and then asked somebody else, I got yeses instead. So in the end, that's what I mean, is that I didn't have um, this vision for myself. I think God did. So part of what I've learned is to not try to control everything,
Mm.
is to just sort of like, trust, do the work, trust, and then let what's going to happen unfold as it is. And sometimes, and oftentimes, it's better than you would have actually, thought of for yourself. So that's what I've learned that I need to do more of, and certainly trust the process. But seeing that unfold as it did was really sort of amazing and a blessing and all kinds of things that I wouldn't have expected otherwise.
Yeah. So what you're saying is that after I edit this episode and I hear your voice and ask you to do something with me, you'll do it, right? I'm just
Yeah,
kidding.
listen, it's funny. Originally, I've done a lot of voiceover work, and I thought I'll do the narration,
Yeah.
but I thought it's going to get so boring listening to me talk all the time. Then I'm singing, and so it's specifically why I wanted someone else to narrate, and
Right.
also why I wanted a female voice. I thought it would be nice to counter that. So that's how Gloria ends up there.
So was that your first time ever meeting her, speaking to her? Or did you have a
The
previous
interview.
relationship? The interview.
No, the interview was that was the first we did. Our interview was in person. It was actually at the museum,
Wow.
not
Okay.
online. And that was the first time I met. And we hit it off, but I didn't. It wasn't like, oh, we're best friends now or
Right.
anything. That's why I was really surprised when when she
I was
said
gonna
yes.
say,
And then we got to spend time.
were you
Say
scared
again?
to ask her?
No, because I thought like it doesn't,
Okay.
she's going to say no anyway. So like, what's the worst? You're afraid when you open the email because you just kind of look at it with one
I know,
eye,
you're
like,
like, "Oh,
what
I
does
don't
that say?
know."
And then you're like, wait a minute, does that really? You squint at it to see. And then when you see it, you're like, wait a minute, it really says that.
Well,
That was pretty exciting.
that is, and that kinda shows you, how God was really in that, too, because just to ask somebody that you only interviewed, um,
Right.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about this project though. And, I know that there are a lot of other artists that are on this with you. So let us know who's on it, what we can expect, and how I know there's narration, there's songs, there's speaking,
Yes.
and it's the Gospel of Mark.
Yes. Right. Yes, it's exactly right. We retell 12 stories from Mark's gospel in chronological order from beginning to end, from John the Baptist preaching in the wilderness all the way to the resurrection. And so it's vignettes, scripture reading, and then songs that sort of act as commentary on those. And the songs are musically, I kind of describe it as this retro rock and soul gospel album. There's some traditional R&B and soul. There's a little country. There's certainly some blues and rock. So it's really American music of all kinds. Sort of everything again that I grew up with, and my co-producer is a man named Mark Prentice. He and I were both very influenced by a lot of the Muscle Shoals records and the Stax records. So there's that kind of vibe in there. Guest wise, there are people, it's a whole gamut from people from the gospel world, the country world. So we have Ernie Haas and Signature Sound from Southern Gospel, the McCrary sisters, the legendary Fisk Jubilee singers, which is amazing, and the Fairfield Four. Rita Wilson, the actor and producer, is on it. Wendy Moten, T. Graham Brown, Mike Farris, Lanisha Randolph, who is Robert Randolph's sister, and from the Robert Randolph Family Band, who also sings with Lauryn Hill. Joseph Rice, who is a pastor in Nashville, but he was the original, not the original. He's one of the former singers of the Fairfield Four. They started 80 years ago, so he's not that old. But he won a bunch of Grammys with them. Rhonda Vincent, the Queen of Bluegrass, and John Barry, great country singer. They're on a song we have out now called "Oh Lonely Day" about the crucifixion. So it's a real. If people, I say it's like a sort of a Christian music for people who maybe don't normally listen to Christian music. Now that doesn't mean if you do listen to Christian music you won't like it, but I think for people who kind of grew up with a lot of those records from the 70s and things, but they're looking for something like, again, for me, it wasn't contemporary Christian or contemporary gospel. It was sort of this in between thing that with some traditional gospel in it. So if people want to hear the story told that way, and hopefully they'll get some. If you've heard the stories 100 times, you'll get a different perspective on it. But maybe if you've never heard the stories, this will be a way to get into it and draw closer to the word, and hopefully in the process closer to God as well.
And these are songs that you wrote or co-wrote all of them, correct?
Yeah, they're all original songs that I either wrote by myself or with my co-writers Dave Rivers and Mark Hauser. And they're my two favorite go-to guys, both in Nashville. And we wrote them during the pandemic, all on Zoom. So
Wow.
we were not in the room together when we did that. But it's recorded in that the album was recorded mostly in Nashville with great artists or side musicians, session musicians. And then I did in my little, as you see, my studio here, I did my parts here.
That's awesome. So I know with writing music, a lot of times when we as artists write music, we are kind of writing for ourselves a lot, especially with Christian music. And so I guess my question to you would be, how has this music spoke to you?
That's a great question. It was an interesting process because we were trying again to sometimes to write about the scripture passage, but again, not necessarily through the lens of telling the story, more of either what was it like for the person who was there experiencing it,
Mhm.
or what is it like from how is the scripture speaking to me now? And so there's times where you want to like make a decision. Well, Mark, it's got to be this way, where you're either taking this approach or you're taking this approach. If you write a lot of country songs, you go to Nashville a lot, that's usually what you're kind of, it's beaten into your brain. Make a decision, go one way. With this, I didn't want to do that. I wanted to just sort of like each song, let it be whatever it's going to be. So as an example, there's a song called Take This Cup, which is about Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. Now, I am, in a sense, I wrote that by myself, and I was writing about Jesus being in the garden and having these thoughts and these struggles. But at the same time, I'm writing from my perspective, or the person at the time I wrote that, we were in the middle of the COVID pandemic. there were a lot of people passing away. I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
it was just a reality. And so there's a line in there that says, I'm afraid, I'm so afraid of dying. Now, I wasn't making a theological statement that Jesus was afraid of dying. That wasn't the goal. It was more for me and the people around us. And again, people who were sick, having those sorts of struggles. So the music for me, I would write it sometimes as if I'm writing about the scripture, but then I'd really realize, like, no, you're right. That's your own experience. I was sort of evangelizing myself through the process, where I thought, like, oh, here I am trying to give this to somebody else. But in the end, I was giving it back to myself. And then I wrote uh, a devotional reflection book based on the scripture writing and the songs. To be honest, Carrie, that for me was more, um, that I was more inspired by that, because I've written 1,000 songs, but I've never written anything like that. And when I would read that back, I thought, wow, that's for me. Like that, I was sort of speaking to myself as I thought I was speaking again to someone else. But I found myself reading it just to be inspired again. And that's never, I don't know that it's ever happened with a song. A song for me is usually like, oh, I wrote that. This was sort of feeding me over again and having me look deeper into the scriptures and studying them more and understanding really what they meant. So the whole process for me has been really, again, I think, self-evangelizing. And I hope that other people will get some of that, even a quarter of it or half of it, whatever it is, that they'll be able to take something for themselves. That's the goal, right? That they'll be able to have that experience for themselves. And that's my hope. At least that's what I pray for.
Well, you answered my next question, which is what is your hope for this album? So there you go.
That's it. And that's all it ever was one, just to give something. It's my Solomon building the temple moment. I can't build a temple, but I can make music. So that was, I thought, okay, I'll do this for God. Here it is. Here, do it what you want. And then at the same time, kingdom wise, hopefully it draws people closer to him. And so it's really those two things. That's it. Anything else that happens is sort of, at this point, gravy. You want 1 million people to hear it if they can, obviously. Maybe it's 1,000, but the point is that of the people who hear it, hopefully there's people who are moved and it helps them draw closer.
Yeah. You know what's funny is I actually literally just yesterday, I follow a Christian artist on Instagram, and they had posted a question asking people what they want more of in Christian music. And so reading through the comments, it was almost every single one saying that they wish that there was more scripture and
Mm.
teaching in the Christian music that people could relate to. So it made me think of, your new record coming out, The Gospel According to Mark, that is that teaching and that scripture that people can learn from. And what's so beautiful about that is it's people who may not know about as much about the scripture. They're new Christians. They can learn about it in music form, which music is so powerful. I know it speaks to me on so many levels. It's like my love language is like music. And so I'm excited to hear it. And I hope that everybody goes and checks out the Gospel According to Mark that comes out May 17th. And so something that I always like to ask before we end too is how everybody at home and how I can pray for you.
Oh, well, I mean, just that
This
that this
album
all
goes
goes.
well.
this, well, I mean, that the whole process goes well. Meaning, like, there's just a lot of people involved. There's an album release party on May 19th. We're rehearsing literally starting tonight, starting with the band. So there's going to be a lot of, not pressure, but yeah, a little bit of pressure on everybody to get it done and get it right. My wife is dealing with, merchandise and things like that.
Yeah.
So, like, just so the whole, for everybody involved, for their traveling, for getting back and forth, for being inspired, for being in the spirit, and for being as low anxiety as we can. I'll certainly, I mean, I'll take it for health and every other thing too that you have, but specifically that one, we just, obviously, we're hoping that everybody is, excited, inspired, and able to get through it. I don't want to say get through it. I don't want to make it sound like but it's a little bit of a get through it. You've got to,
Oh yeah, for
it's a
sure.
project. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as an artist, it's your baby and it's something that you want to be successful in, but I mean, also wanting to give God the glory through it, but you still want people to like it too and for it to go well.
Right.
Um,
Right.
of course. So will you be going on tour soon? Are people able to check you out, to come see you at the
Yes.
show?
So we're booking some things now for the end of the summer, early fall.
Okay,
Um, I would encourage everybody to go to markgospel.com. It's easy to remember, markgospel.com.
there you go.
From there, you can see all the current lyric videos, the behind the scenes footage, the streaming links to the songs that are out. If you watch this by the time you see this and the album's out, the link will be on there as well. Tour dates, anything else. So markgospel.com, go join us there, and any other information you want, we'll keep it up to date.
Awesome. Mark, thanks so much for chatting with me today, and it was such a pleasure to have you on the show. And thank you all for watching, and please make sure on May 17th to go and listen to the Gospel According to Mark and let him know what you think about it. I'm sure he wants to hear your feedback. And thank you all for watching, and just remember until next time to carry on.